Hi, it's Mike Thornton from Pro Tools Expert, and today I want to show you the brand new Subharmonic plugin from Avid. Great news is that it's both native and DSP, so for users like myself with an HDX system, I can use it in DSP mode, which is really good news. So what will the Subharmonic plugin do? Well, in essence, it's generating subharmonics. It's generating harmonics of the audio below the fundamental. So it's great for thickening out low end and also for doing post work for getting explosions and other types of effects like thunder, all working really nicely. So we've got options for where the plugin will take its audio from, which frequency band. So we can go up for as far as 120 to 180, all the way down to 40 to 60. So what I'm going to do is just play a bit of speech from Russ.
Waves already have a
and now if we start to mix that in,
world, and this was really created for the live
you can
world,
hear the low end starting to come in. So it's generating harmonics below his natural voice.
Waves already have a presence.
And you can also see here that we've got the different bands. So we've got the direct sound, which I can control here, or I can go onto the GUI and just control it from there. And you can see there the band that it's actually affecting. So that's the 120 to 180 band there. And then we've got two subharmonic bands. So we've got 90 and 60, which represent half of the frequency band. So 60 to 120 and 180 being 90. So again, we can control those, and you can see here in the display where those are happening. Or obviously I can also control it from here. And then I can also solo just what's going on in the process. Because what we've got is we've got the direct, so that's this 120 to 180 band. So that's in, we've got a level adjustment for that. We then got a level adjustment for this 90 Hertz band. You can see that going up and down. And then 60 Hertz band. And again, it's all very clear. And now we've got these two filters up here. So we've got this one, which effectively, these two filters are controlling the bandwidth which comes out of the process. In other words, whatever's the full wet. So at the moment, we've got this one here. We can adjust the low pass. So we can trim that off. We can also adjust the Q, again, by getting hold of where the filter goes up and down. And we can push it up and get peaks. So if you want a peak, then you can do that. And then we've got this one here, which is controlling, which is effectively the high pass. So again, we can bring that down or up, depending on what we want. And again, we can do the same thing with the gain on that one. Missed. Let's try the here. No, still haven't got it. There we go. And so again, you can put a peak in that. And then we've got the option for saturation. So we can increase the saturation too. And there's a range of different options for the saturation, different clean ones. So you've got lots of different options. So that just gives you a sense of how we can drive it. You can also adjust the filters from up here, and you can control those, or you can do it on the graphical interface like that. So that's a basic run round the plugin. So how can we use it in reality? So let's take a look at one of the sound effects. So here we are, and what we can do is take a look. So this is bypassed. And you can see that the display goes grey. And now we can actually start looking at that. And if I use the solo button here, this now gives me the full wet, irrespective of the position on the mix. So again, I'm just going to go up to the maximum 120 to 180, and now we can start to create some, maybe let's put some saturation in. So, okay, so now let's just take the full wet off. So now we've got that instead of, Now obviously I've somewhat overdone that just purely for effect, but you can see how you can treat it. And in fact, not only can we solo the full wet version, we can also solo the individual bands. So that's just what's going in through the direct, and then this is just the 90 Hertz band, this band here, and then we've got just the 60 Hertz band as well, so this band here. So we might just open that out a bit. So again, we can tweak that until we're happy with it. And same sort of thing with machine guns. So if we go into bypass, you can see that's already made an improvement. So obviously we can go full wet. So what about some music? So again, for music, probably better to go for around the 60 to 90 Hertz setting. And so we've got this track. And as you can hear, it's quite easy to overdo it. So there is our, so if I now just bring the mix in, maybe bring some of the direct sound, let's just have a listen to what that's doing. Bypass, back in. I do like using the drive. I do find it gives me a better effect than just turning up the bands. But again, you can see all the different bands. You can see where the filter is filtering off the very low end from the processed output and the higher end from the processed output. So again, we can adjust those. So I could bring that back down. So the processed output is only just producing the areas that we want to work with. Again, if I do a full solo and I just open that out and we bring the direct up a bit, you can hear how that filter is impacting. So again, maybe we just set it so that it's just working in the area that we want, and we can adjust the Q. So we might put, but obviously that's now putting a peak in during the direct area, so maybe just bring the direct down a bit. And we could do the similar thing with this low end, which is now putting a peak in during around the 30 Hertz mark. And then we'll just go back to the full mix. Bypass. And there we go. So that's giving you an indication of sorts of things that we can do with music. And whilst we're here on the music area, there's one really neat feature where we can actually use MIDI to control these bands. So what I'm going to do now is to route my MIDI to this track, and now watch what happens. See, every time a MIDI note changes, the bands move up and down. So you can actually go in and decide, if you know what the key of the song is, then you can actually use the MIDI keyboard to actually track, say, the bass line. Or you can, if you know the key of the song, you can actually use this to track the kick drum, and so effectively pitch the low end of the kick drum to match the key of the song. So lots of really neat tricks with this MIDI input feature. So I just looked what the MIDI node was and set the output of my MIDI track to that node, and then recorded it, and now I'm just playing back the MIDI, which is now moving the bands around. So the last thing I want to do is to show you it in surround mode, because again, this has some extra features when you use it on the surround track. You'll notice now that we've got these extra sends down here. So this is all the same. And what I've got here, if I just put this plug-in into bypass, is an explosion. So that could really do with some adjustment. So what we can do is we can go into the presets, and here there is this nice explosion preset for working with surround. And so now what we've got is the original mix control becomes a mix between how much you're sending to the LFE channel and how much you're sending to the front stereo. And then we've got a level control for the amount of wet and a level control for the amount of dry. We can also determine what speakers we send this to, obviously the LFE, but we can also decide whether we're just going to the fronts, to the centre and to the surround. And normally I wouldn't put anything in the centre. I like to keep the centre channel clear for dialogue, but it might be quite nice for a more immersive feel to put some of this LF in the surround channels as well. So if we take the bypass off, now obviously you're listening to a down mix of this, so you won't be able to get the full benefit of the surround version. So this is before. And this is now processed. So you can see there how much we've been able to process it. So I can determine where my originals are. I've not put any direct in. Maybe we'll just bring a little bit of direct in. And then maybe we'll just tweak the Q up and move the frequency just around there. So once again, before, and now after. So it's a really neat little plugin. There's all sorts of little features in here. For instance, you can set the input level. There's just a little fader here. You can use that to give up to plus 18 dBs and minus 18 dBs. And again, the usual feature of clicking on it with the Alt key brings it back to the reset. But it's not taken up any additional screen real estate for a fader. We've got the input metering, we've got the output metering, so we can make sure that we're not overloading our output channel. And you can see here that I've actually turned the output down a little bit. We've got this graphical interface which allows us to access the filters and also the level of the different outputs. All really neat, very easy to use, and as I said right at the beginning, one of the biggest benefits for me is this is available as an AAX DSP version as well as AAX native. So check it out for yourself. I'm sure you're going to enjoy using it. I'll see you again soon.